Alright y'all, welcome back to the channel and do some more turkey patterning. And today, my shoulder's in for some pain, let me tell you what. Because the shell we've got out here today is mildly excessive, to put it nicely. But hey, I forgot I had one more of these shells left from last season when we tested them. And when I found it, and happened to have this new choke as well, I figured, yeah, we absolutely have to test it to see what happens. Because it's going to look ridiculous, I can tell you that right now. And the shell I'm talking about are some of these. Some of the Salt Creek Custom cold turkey shells. These are a 12 gauge 3.5 inch 2 3/4 ounce payload of number 9 TSS shot, moving about 1100 feet per second. A 2 3/4 ounce payload in a 3.5 inch shell is bad enough, yet alone them being number 9 TSS shot. These shells are mildly ridiculous in every way possible, that's for sure. And we did test them a good while back last spring on the channel with multiple different situations, different ranges. I think we even did a few 60-yard tests with these if you'd like to see that. So my shoulder is definitely going to be feeling it after this shell, that's for sure. And as for the setup we've got to run them through today, I brought out the Mossberg 835 Ulti-Mag here, which is my 3.5 inch chambered shotgun. And these are not known to be nice on recoil either, so this whole combination just is going to be pain for both me and the turkey, that's for sure. So today, got the 835 out here. And as for a choke, I picked up one of these. Now the package is fogging up from the humidity out here this morning, but a lot of you guys wanted to see a Truglo SSX on the channel, which is the Strut Stopper Xtreme. Now typically these are a 643 constriction. However, since we got it for the 835, which is an overboard shotgun, this one is a 670 constriction. So in general 12 gauge terms, it's a little bit more open for a turkey choke, but in the sense of an 835, this is a little bit on the tighter side, that's for sure. So with this choke and those 3.5 inch 2 3/4 ounce 9s, this is going to be a ridiculous looking pattern, I can guarantee you that, that's for sure. So as for the test today, I figured sure, we can probably shoot these shells at 70 yards or something ridiculous and still see a good looking pattern. But just for the sake of doing it, I wanted to do everything the same as we always do. So the turkey paper is set up at 40 yards, just like always. I've got the chronograph as well, so we'll be able to get what kind of speed we're running. So let's get you guys a view of this target. We'll take the shot, look at the chrono, and then go down range and check out our results. This is going to be painful on both ends for me and the turkey, that's for sure. And I know to expect devastation out of these shells. So let's head over here and take this shot and just see what kind of ridiculous looking pattern we can actually get at 40 yards here. Okay, so that shell gave us 1084 through the chronograph while simultaneously ruining my shoulder for the next 3 days. But either way, the box claimed 1100, so we're pretty much right where we should be. I don't know that I'd really want to feel what these shells feel like if they were up in the 1200 feet per second range. So at 1084, that's more than good enough for what these shells can bring. But how well did they actually perform down there at 40 yards? I think we already know the answer, but let's go down and take a look at our target anyway. Alright, now we're down here at our 40-yard paper, and this is the devastation that we got. And I gotta say, this Birchwood Casey doesn't even do it justice. And for that fact, when I pull this paper down here in a minute, we'll take a quick look at the backside, which I think will give you a better picture of what's actually going on, because it clearly did not flake off properly at all. But we will look at it. I mean, he, at 40 yards, doesn't have a head left. You know you have a ton of shot when it legitimately just peels off the entire bit of paint that covers his whole head area on that turkey paper there. And I mean, most of the entire rest of the paper looks the exact same way. That is just ridiculous, to say the least. There's no other way to put it, really. And on top of that, these shells are not just a ridiculous amount of payload flying down range. They're actually good patterning shells. I mean, look at the overall pattern. That's not terrible whatsoever. That would be a good pattern for your typical like 1 3/4 ounce number 9 12 gauge shells or something. So they actually pattern good while also being a ridiculously high payload. And we really only saw maybe a couple of flyers. I mean, there's 1 or 2 up on the top left up there, and maybe 1 or 2 more just sporadic around the edges. But overall, I mean, 95% of your pattern is in a baseball sized circle right there on his forehead. But I mean, for what it's worth, it does give you leeway, and it's a pretty even, uniform looking pattern. So just like I suspected in the beginning, complete and total devastation, which I think you'll get an even better picture as soon as we flip this target over here in a minute. But if you were hunting with these shells and you didn't have a good cheek weld, or you had to do some kind of awkward hold, yeah, that would not feel very good on your shoulder or your cheekbone or anything like that, that's for sure. But if you're one of those guys that wants a ridiculous shell to reach out into the middle of a field, that might do it for you right there. So at the end of the day, good overall pattern, even though really where these shells shine is the amount of shot on paper, that's for sure. So definitely a win for what these shells are all day long. Absolutely good enough to take a bird at 40 yards. I don't think that was ever a question here with these shells. Okay, and here's that turkey paper from behind, just so you can get a little bit of a better reference point in the peeling paint. But I mean, this is ridiculous. This looks like somebody took a salt shaker, unscrewed the lid, and dumped it on the table for the amount of shot that's on here. When you have holes that you can pretty much push a pencil through there because there's so many pellets in that hole, you know that you've got a lot of pellets to work with here. So that is just a ridiculous amount of shot on that paper. Okay, and here's the wad out of that shell, and pretty typical looking for Salt Creek stuff. No rips or tears or anything in there. We had one petal that opened up a little farther than the rest, but that's no big deal. Nothing stuck down in there at all, which is always nice to see. Overall, the wad looks pretty good, pretty average. The bottom is a little bit, it almost looks melted or something down here, but clearly I don't think it made any kind of a difference whatsoever in our pattern performance. But the wad itself looks pretty average, run-of-the-mill. Nothing too special to see, that's for sure. All right, y'all. Well, what did you think about that performance right there? I've said it 1,000 times already, but that is just devastation. I think the turkey probably would not have a head, even at 40 yards, which is impressive to say the least, that's for sure. Is it a shell that I would use? As far as the pattern goes, yeah, absolutely. But as far as the pain goes, that's a different story. It's bad enough running a pretty standard loaded 3.5-inch shell, but with a 2 3/4 ounce load like that, you are going to feel it. So it is a bit excessive for me, but hey, I know there's several of you guys that would shoot nothing other than a shell like that. So if that's you, then this is your shell. But as always, leave your thoughts about it in the comments. Is that about what you expected? Were you a little bit surprised one way or the other? Have you tested these shells or something similar to it? Would you hunt with this shell or something similar to it? Or is that a bit excessive for you as well? Let me know all that down below. But either way, just because it might be a little bit excessive or over the top doesn't make it a bad shell, because clearly these are some pretty good shooting shells, that's for sure. So Salt Creek definitely doing something right to be able to handle that amount of payload flying down range. But with that being said, I've got plenty more stuff coming for you guys, so stay tuned. Some new loads and chokes and stuff still that you're not going to want to miss, so keep an eye out for all that. As always, we have the channel Instagram as well as the mailbox where you can send stuff if you'd like. All that information will be in the description if you're interested in it. But I'm going to get back to it, so I'll see y'all in the next one.